this couple comes up and they hear this commotion and they say to my father and mother, you will watch your kids and they'll be perfect. We'll do everything for them. Well, they never came back.
And they arrested my uncle and then released him from jail. They followed him home and they shot him in front of his parents' house.
I was known in camp as number 20,629. That was my name in camp.
Welcome to Names Not Numbers. I'm so glad that you could all be here. This is an interesting time to be a part of Names Not Numbers. You know, it's a difficult time in our world where we see the largest increase in anti-Semitic incidents since it was recorded from the Anti-Defamation League.
False allegations against Jews are getting more and more popular, and it's just important to learn that.
Today, 78 years after the end of the Holocaust, 31% of all Americans believe that 2 million, not 6 million, or fewer were killed in the Holocaust. You have the great fortune to be able to sit across from a survivor, ask them whatever questions you want to know, and you're making an oral history documentary. And this is for posterity. And as Jane said, these are archived in major Holocaust museums, institutions, and universities. That 100 years from now, they will have your documentary.
I've never met a Holocaust survivor before. I think this experience is going to help me gain a perspective on the Holocaust and like people dealing with separation from their family.
And Holocaust survivors, fortunately, most of them have family that they've spoken to. But it's time for us to take that story further and further and further so that we can keep telling the story. Yes, things in the world are really not so great today, but it's you guys that are going to help us improve the world.
We'll be the last generation to hear them firsthand, so it's important that future generations know what happened.
I'd love for you to understand that as hard and wonderful as this process might be for you as students sitting here and getting it, that's as hard as it is for our survivors. None of telling their story is easy. So we're all in this together. We're all pushing our boundaries in some ways to be here. And I hope in the end you'll feel very satisfied and very fulfilled by the experience.
My name is Moshe Avital. I was born in a shtetl, a town called Bilka in eastern Czechoslovakia. They took us to the train station where there were boxcars, and they pushed in 100 people into each boxcar.
I think that the video, it really inspired me to learn more, not just about the Holocaust survivors, but also strategies on how we're going to be making these videos, everything that's incorporated to create that recording, and every little thing you wouldn't even think of, and it's cool to be able to help out with everything.
Really, the big question in the end of all of this is, what are you going to be able to do with your documentary, really, to change the world? Because it is in your hands, in the hands of educated youth.
Hey everyone, my name's Dan. I've worked, years ago I worked in news journalism. I worked at NPR, I worked at a place called Air America Radio. But so the first thing is just to talk about preparation for an interview, okay? You're gonna have a chance to do a lot of research, to learn the survivor's story and to learn some of the historical background. Doesn't mean you need to ask about every single piece of information. It's your job to pull out from that, but you wanna go into your interview with a plan.
He taught us to not ask yes or no questions, and to also not ask like more than one question at the same time so that they like don't just keep going on and on.
is so that you don't have to be distracted thinking about like, what question am I asking next and which historical fact do I need to get, because you're gonna have that all that on the paper, and that way you can focus on listening.
The journalist told us to ask open-ended questions so that you wouldn't get no information. He told us to be confident and look people in the eye and listen to what they were saying.
Remember that you're trying to get your survivor to tell stories. Instead of saying like, when you arrived in America, were you scared? Say, when you arrived in America, how did you feel?
Part of the reason I did this program was because I want to go into journalism and reporting when I'm older, and I think it's going to be really valuable in the future.
Hear about millions and millions of Jews, it kind of just sort of, it's hard to even wrap your brain around it. So by telling one specific person's story, it makes it more powerful and also more real.
All right, everybody. I'm going to be teaching you guys filming techniques today. What I have in front of me is a camera. It is what makes a movie a movie. What I am going to teach you, this is something that you guys have to learn, is the rule of thirds. Imagine there is a hashtag or a grid on the screen. You want to keep the subject more or less on 1/3 of the image.
I've never used equipment like this before. It was a fun experience learning how to use the cameras.
Some lessons were how to keep the image in focus, how to keep them in the right view, and to sometimes change the view so that you can get every person in the film.
Using this type of camera was a really cool experience because I've never done anything like that before, so it was something new.
Film is a visual format. It's also an audio format, but when you are in charge of the main camera, you're going to wear a pair of headphones. You're going to have 2 channels of audio. The first channel of audio is going to be the microphone that's on the survivor, which is the one. The second channel of audio is going to be the one that's on the student asking the questions. Channel 1, channel 2. You're going to see the audio waveforms. They're going to be bouncing back and forth. You want to make sure they're right in the middle. You don't want them too far out towards the red. That means there's going to be distortion, and you also don't want it to be too low. That means there's not going to be clear enough. And you want to make sure that there's no interference. When we're making the documentaries, you can cover up a bad shot, you can cover up something that's out of focus, you can cover up an unflattering angle. You cannot cover up bad audio.
Like, it's very simple, and like you just got to make sure everything's good and focused.
I've never used equipment like this before, and it was good to learn how to use it and how to really make the story come to life.
Today, I will be interviewing Rachel Epstein.
Today I'm going to be interviewing Rosalie Simon.
I'm going to be interviewing Manny Corman.
I'm really excited, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of emotions when having a one-on-one conversation with the Holocaust survivors.
It gives me an important role to make sure that everyone hears the stories.
I'm nervous and I'm ready to learn about her story at the same time.
I'm very excited and I'm very hopeful, and I'm very lucky to be able to get this experience.
I'm feeling really excited to learn more about Holocaust and hearing it from someone who had to experience life in that time.
So hi, my name is Bella. Okay, please tell us your name.
My name is Manfred Corman. I was born December 21, 1931 in Hamburg, Germany. Before the war, when I was born, I was introduced to a family of an older brother, who was 3.5 years older than I, and my mother and father. My father was a shoe salesman, a traveling shoe salesman. My mother was a homemaker. My relationship with my parents was fantastic, as far as I can remember. We had a normal Jewish household, so I learned something about Friday night and going to synagogue and things of that nature. We lived in an apartment which was right near a soccer field. I used to look out the window of my apartment and watch a construction of an apartment house across the street. I can remember that. I did attend kindergarten in Hamburg, Germany in 1938. Hamburg was a major port city and very cosmopolitan. Shopping centers, department stores. It was kind of modern for those years, and it was quite a nice city.
My name is Rachel Epstein. I am born in April 29, 1932. Don't calculate. I was born in the city of Saint-Quentin in France. I had my mother and father and a little brother. He was 5 years younger than I. Compiègne was called a royal city. It had big palaces. In school, I was going to school, and in France it was only girls, big classes. I remember that I was sent to the principal's office quite often because I was talking too much. It was very nice, really. My father had a business. He was selling children's clothes. My mother she was a housewife, and we had a normal life like a little girl, very happy. I lived in a beautiful city in France.
Hi, can you please tell us your name?
Rosalie Simon. I was born on July 25th, 1931. I was born in Czechoslovakia, Velká Kriva, Czechoslovakia. It was average family. We were 6 children, 5 girls and a boy. My mother was a homemaker, and my father was doing wholesale fruits. He used to buy fruits from the farmers and sell it to the stores. In the morning when I got up, I went to pick up milk for breakfast, and my mother prepared breakfast for the children. And after breakfast, we went to school, which was about 8 o'clock. Came home about 3. And then after I did my homework, I went to play with the friends. My family was Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox. The holidays at my home was beautiful. My favorite memory was playing with my friends, and also school. I liked school. I did not see any anti-Semitism before the war.
Germany changed rather dramatically, and for my family, there was a major situation which solidified that thinking. My mother had a brother who was killed by the Nazis in 1933. That was after Hitler came to power. My uncle was part of an organization that was opposing the Hitler regime in terms of what they were doing and so on and so forth. And they arrested my uncle and then released him from jail. They followed him home and they shot him in front of his parents' house. So that was, for our family, the first incident of Hitler regime in action. In October 28, 1938, which was a Friday, a policeman came to our door and indicated to my father, who answered the door, indicated to my father that we have about a half hour to 45 minutes to prepare suitcases for each of us, small suitcases for each of us, and we are to accompany him to the local police station. And they put us in jail for the day. We did not know what was happening. It wasn't until the evening of October 28th that we were taken by truck to the local railroad station, and there we met my father on the platform. There was a train waiting for us, and the train was filled with families from Hamburg, Germany. My father was of Polish background. He was a Polish citizen. Hitler had announced the morning of October 28th would be used to arrest those families, and who were head of household was Polish, and ship them out to Poland. I can remember my father on that train looking out the window, and my father waved goodbye with 2 hands. That's when we were in Spongin, Poland. And my father was not the schmaltziest guy in the world. When we got to the border, they took us off the train, Ran across the border. Somebody finally ran across the border because the Poles on the other side had guns in their hands. We suddenly ran across the border and we were in Poland, and we were put in horse stables. My father left Poland in April of 1939. In November of 38, I'm going back, but because we're now in 39, the British government, Parliament, had made a decision that they would accept 10,000 children from the mainland. So she signed us up for that, knowing that she could not go with us. So my father was in Holland, was in a concentration camp in Holland, and he got to Holland, by the way. There's a whole story that goes with that. He took the ship to Cuba, and the ship that he was on was a St. Louis. The captain of the ship was told he could not disembark the people on board ship. The captain tried to find other places for the people to go to. Well, countries refused. The ship ended up going to Miami Beach, the waters off Miami, and asked the United States government to take in these 800 some odd passengers of that ship, and the American government refused. And so that ship finally had to go back to Europe, but the captain was able to avoid going back to Germany. And Belgium, France, Holland, and England accepted these 800 some odd passengers. And my father ended up in Holland. When they invaded Holland, the camp that my father ended up in was Camp Westerbork, which was a German concentration camp, but a shipping camp, not an extermination camp. My mother was then able to find her way back to Germany. So she ended up writing her uncle in the United States, her mother's brother, that she needed a visa to leave Germany. And that didn't receive an answer. And she wrote him a second time and didn't receive an answer. She finally wrote a first cousin who had the same uncle, who lived in the United States, and asked him to go see the uncle and see if he would send a visa. When he went to see the uncle said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Someone in his family read them, tore them up, because they didn't want, somebody in the family didn't want the possible financial burden of taking care of someone. And then my mother was able to maneuver her way to Genoa, Italy. And from Genoa, Italy, she took a ship to the United States, and she was the first one out of our family to arrive in the United States. My brother and I, we ended up in England. The organization that worked on this in England greeted us and took us to meet the people who had agreed to take us into their homes. And so we were in London.
In 1939, that's when we started bombing. The France formed a Polish army fighting for France. So my father was a young man in his late 20s. So he registered and he went into the army. And in 1939, and I lived in a very popular, in the center of town, and near near the railroad. So there were a lot of bombing by the English, the bridge, and they were bombing the railroad. In one bombing, my house got hit. We ran out of the house, and I saw my house go down. You become numb to everything. You get scared. Like my mother took us in a car, and we ran away because they were bombing my town so much that we ran away. So we went to Paris. Well, we went there because, like I said, we never thought Paris would get invaded, and just Very shortly after arriving in Paris, France was completely taken over by the German. So France lost, so my father came back. And we stayed in Paris like about a year. But it was a war, and there was no joy, there was no happiness. You just stay close to your parents. You didn't do anything, didn't go anywhere, didn't see anyone else.
In 1941, we were expelled from school. I remember a Jewish man being beaten up on the street by the Hungarian police for no reason at all. Blood was gushing from his whatever was on the sidewalk. And I was very sad to see that because the man didn't do anything. We had a certain time to walk around the streets, and by a certain time we had to be home. And we had to wear the yellow stars. Couldn't go without the yellow stars. And we turned the lights off early because we didn't want any trouble. I was very confused what is going on and why.
War breaks out September 1. England is involved in the war. They evacuated us to the countryside. The town we went to was called Talaton, T-A-L-A-T-O-N. Total Christian society. They were wonderful to us. But the school system sent a Jewish teacher with us. He ran Saturday services in this Christian community every Saturday. I was always able to stay with my brother. I was very lucky. One of the kids from the Kindertransport group attached himself to my brother and me, living with this Christian mother and daughter in this little town of Talaton. They took care of us. They taught us things about living in the countryside in a farm area. I learned how to take chickens from a chicken coop and how to feed chickens and ducks and so on and so forth. From that viewpoint, I had a real learning experience.
We returned to our town in Compiègne. We started to look for an apartment. It was a 3-family house, and we got the apartment on the third apartment on top. And then by that time, the German was already there. They took a list of all the Jews. The most important Jews to them was the Jews that came from Poland or Russia. They said those are the real Jews. So they say, okay, the Jews, they had a business. They had to put a plaque, a big plaque which said Jew on there. After all, Jews cannot have a business no more. So my father had to give up the business, and he couldn't find another job because nobody would hire. Who's going to hire a Jew? So he ended up digging trenches. So they, little by little like this, they made nothing out of the Jews, nothing. It was July 19, 1942. The French police all of a sudden teamed up with the German. There's a knock on the door, 6 o'clock in the morning. My father opens the door and he sees the gendarme, which he knew. Oh, hi, how are you? You know, he says, did you want me to fix something or do something for me? 6 o'clock in the morning, the gendarme made believe they never saw my father before. No, you have to come down to the police station with us. My mother started to scream, started to cry, and so my brother and I, we woke up. We were 10 years old. I was 10, my brother was 5. Then we hear that they'd been taken away, so we started to scream. We started to cry. So we had just moved in about a couple months in this apartment, so we really didn't know. And besides, even if you know people, nobody talked really with one another. You used to pass in the street, or we used to pass in the steps, and we used to say, "Hi, how are you? The weather is nice." And that's it. No talking, no anything. So they didn't know nothing about us, and we didn't. Anyway, so they hear screaming and all that. So they come upstairs. And they say, what happened in this? Then they see the cops. They see the cops. And what's going on? I don't know. They're taking us away, and we don't know. And my mother screamed, my father screamed, "What about my kids? What about my kids?" And they say to my father and mother, their name was Malmed. They say, "Monsieur, Madame Malmed, don't worry. You'll go down, you'll see, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. You'll be coming back. In the meantime, you will watch your kids, and they'll be perfect. We'll do everything for them. You know, just do not worry." Well, they never came back.
You know, it's back to living with my brother, being with my brother. And that gave me a confidence of security. So I adapted to it. There were things which there was a total insecurity. So I was doing fine in terms of living there and so on and so forth, and knowing this is where I am, I have no choice, but my brother is here. But when I say I was a mess, I was a nail biter, a thumb sucker, a stutterer, and a bedwetter. So I was, from that viewpoint, I was not well put together. He took his responsibility very serious. So his first thinking was always about his brother in terms of making sure that he's okay. And his seriousness evolved into his adulthood. We would not be the same people that we are today, that's for sure.
In 1944, my family was deported to a ghetto called Mátészalka, Hungary. I was 12 years old when I was taken from my home. In the ghetto, we were together with my mother and father and the whole family. Upon arrival, there was no room for us to stay, and they put us in a cemetery on the ground. That's where we slept. After a couple of days, we were placed in an attic with some other families, and children were crying, and we were all hungry. Most of the stuff we ate is what my mother brought from home. She brought beans and rice, and we made a fire outside. We had a couple of pots, and she cooked them some food. I volunteered to read books for the children, to forget about their hunger, and the time went by, so it worked for me as well.
Please tell us about the risks your neighbors took by taking you and your brother.
They were young people, you know, in their late 30s. They had two sons. One son was 19, the other one was 17. They could have been arrested for harboring Jews. Their children could have been arrested, and killed. It didn't mean anything for the German to take out their gun and shoot you on sight if they felt like it. You put your family at risk, you put the whole neighborhood at risk. And they used to answer, well, they are children, and children to be saved. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to do everything possible to save those two children. When we ate, he would say to their children, "You are grown already." And he would take some food and he would give it to my brother and I. He said, because they are small, bones are forming, they need the nutrition. So they would take food out of the children's mouth to give to us. And Madame Riboulot, she was very strict on education. She made sure that I go to school. The hardest things to me during the war, it was being a Jew. I was treated all over the place. We were hiding in the open. We went to school, we went outside in the street. We took chances, but nobody ever said anything. I guess God was watching over us, although I didn't know there was a God then, but He was there. Fear. You have a fear, you never know, you don't know what's going to happen. Every day is the thing, I have to be careful. I have to be careful. I hope I stay alive.
Because they had a schoolhouse, 2 rooms, one for the older children, one for the younger children, 2 teachers, of course. We had to go to school every day. Then we played and rode bicycles. I learned how to ride a bike in England. They were friends. In fact, there was a relative of the 2 ladies whom we lived with living next door, and he became our friend. But that ended when my brother and I left England. Well, when I got to England, I knew maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not sure if I was able to count to 10. Spoke absolutely no English. Didn't take long, however, and I spoke English. Everything they did was kind. The fact that they took us in, strange kids, not knowing them, they took us in, and I mean, we were young kids. We broke stuff, you know. It was, and yet they were just wonderful to us.
Before we went to the ghetto, my teacher, who was my favorite teacher, was there to take all our jewelry away. He said, if you don't give me your jewelry, they're going to take it away from you and you will be punished. And of course, we gave him all the jewelry. When we were sent out of ghetto, we were taken to a train where 80 people were put into one cattle car. I happened to be the 81st person, and I was shoved into another car with some people that I didn't know. The biggest problem was, it was traumatic for me to be separated from my family, plus I had no food. They needed the food for their own children, but they did share the food with me. They gave me some. The journey to Auschwitz was very difficult. I missed my family, and I was very sad. And of course, I was hungry, and all I could think of is, when am I going to see my family again? When I arrived to Auschwitz, I was still 12 years old. I had no idea where we were going. The train just moved farther and farther, and I had no idea where we were going. It seemed like it lasted forever. Upon arrival to Auschwitz is the selections and the inmates that secretly told us what to do. Me personally, he said, "How old are you?" I said, 12. He said, "Tell him you're 16. Dr. Mengele was there. The selections upon arrival, and he decided who should live and who should die. And he sent me to the left with my mother. And he sent my 4 sisters to the right, and my father and little brother to the right. But we didn't know what that indicated, what left means and what right means. but I did hear on the loudspeaker, those of you that are going to the left will receive more bread. And since I was very close to my sisters, I decided to get my sisters and come with us, and so they could have more bread too. My naive mind. And I let go of my mother's hand and I started to run back to find my sisters. I found them, but I was unable to go back and meet with my mother. I was devastated for leaving my mother. I did not know what happened to my mother or the sisters on the first day until I saw the sisters, and my mother I never saw again. My brother was standing with my father, and Mengele asked, is this your son? And he said, yes. And then he asked him, how old is he? So he told him the truth. He said, he's 13. And he's a sick child. And please take good care of him. He was on medication and he had a heart condition. So he took him out of line, my little brother, and he sent him to the gas chamber. After we took the showers and they cut our hair off, we lied down on a wooden board, and a male inmate was cutting our hair under the arms, on the head, pubic hair, everything you can imagine how we felt. Our lives didn't mean anything, our feelings didn't mean anything anymore. We just had to do what we had to do. So after we took the showers, we were given striped dresses, and we were taken to a barrack. And there were 3-tier beds with wooden boards, about 6 by 6 feet, and about 10 of us were in one. It was raining that day. I went outside and held my mouth open under the roof to get some water because we had no water the whole time. All of a sudden, I felt a slap on my head. And I turned around and I said, why are you hitting me? She gave me another slap and told me, here, you don't ask any questions. Do you understand? I learned fast. And about 10 of us were in one bed with a wooden board. The living conditions were terrible. We had to get up early in the morning, like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I don't even know what time it was. And we had to stand roll call, whether it was raining or snowing or hot or whatever. But since we arrived in May, we didn't have any snow, just heat. And it was difficult to stand in the heat. So we were counted, and then we were not allowed to go back into the barrack. And we lied down on the ground, and my lips were swollen from the hot sun. And in the evening, we were going back into the barrack. What we had for food is black coffee in the morning and some kind of a soup that was full of junk. It was impossible to eat. And as hungry as I was, I could not eat it. Evening, we had 2 little rotten potatoes and some, I don't know if it was liverwurst or something. So I thought about, should I leave 1 potato for the morning? Because we really didn't get any breakfast, just black coffee. But I did not. I always had the 2 little potatoes I was afraid if I leave it for tomorrow, somebody's going to steal it and I'll have nothing. It was tremendously comforting to have my sisters by my side. I depended on them so much. And they helped me a lot. They helped me.
They're arresting every Jew that is remaining in my city, in Compiègne. Every Jew has to go. So they went to town and they got all the addresses, they got the roundup. That was not the French police, it was the Nazi themselves went and they started to arrest it. My brother and I, we were the first two names on the list. For some reason, somehow, they couldn't read the name, the first two names, because there was coffee that was spilled over it. So what they did is they went to the next people and they said, we'll take care of those two names later on. When she came home, she passed a house where the Jew lived and she saw the German truck and she saw the Nazi arresting a woman there with a little baby. They took my brother and they hid him till I came from school. When I came from school, like maybe 10, 15 minutes later, she said to me, hurry up, grab a bicycle, we run away. We have to run away. And he knew somebody there that lived there. And he went to the house, she didn't want to let us in. And he pushed her aside, he says, we're coming in, we're staying here for the day. The man says, I have to go and see what's happening. So he came, he took his bicycle, so he went to our house. He sees the German truck right in front of our house. And he sees the Nazi taking his son. The truck and his son arrived together, taking his son and put him into the truck. What's a father to do when you see that? Didn't do nothing, he froze. 10 minutes later, he sees the sun comes out. God was doing something. We found out later he took the son to ask him, where are the Malmö children? That was us. And they put us on the end of the list. There was like maybe 100 people that day to be arrested. So we were on the end of the list. So when they come to our house, they didn't find nobody. My brother and I were the only two survivors that remained in the town that were saved.
My mom, she left Germany in 1940, April of 40, and took a ship from Genoa, Italy, to the United States. We were with the family in England from September 39 to September of 1940. My mother, who had come to the United States first, wanted her children. Somehow visas were worked out, and my brother and I left Joseph and these two ladies in Telleton, September 1, 1939. Traveled on a ship called the Cameronia, which is a British ship to the United States. War was already in action, so the Germans had U-boats all over the place. And the ship in back of us was sunk, a ship in front of us was sunk. Somehow we made it, and we arrived in the United States on September 10th, 1940. And my mother greeted us at the pier.
So how long were you at the camp for?
In Auschwitz, I was for about 3 months. They had selections, and that's when I was chosen by Dr. Mengele to go to the gas chamber again, because he thought that I was not old enough to work in a factory, hard labor. So he chose me to go to that room. And that's when the Jewish woman saved me. I didn't see anybody carry on the way I did in that room. And perhaps that's why I was saved, because I carried on, knocking on the window and pleading, let me out of here, I want to live. And she heard that woman, and so I was chosen. She chose me out of all the others to be saved. They notified Auschwitz that they needed 900 women to work in an ammunition factory. And that's where we're heading, to the ammunition factory in Geislingensteige. And arriving to Geislingen was like heaven compared to Auschwitz. I happened to have a boss who was very kind. I was lucky. He was the only one that called me by my name. He called me Rosita. Otherwise, I was known in camp as number 20,629. That was my name in camp. We worked alternating from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, and after 1 week we worked from 6 at night to 6 in the morning. I remember it was Yom Kippur, and they served us a very nice meal. But to me, it was such a holy day, remembering from home what Yom Kippur was like, that I thought maybe God is going to help us if I don't eat.
We were liberated, but Paris was not liberated yet, because they had to pass. Where I live 40 kilometers from Paris. So they were on their way. So everything that came in Normandy, that came, the trucks, the cannons, the cars, everything, for days, for weeks and nights, they were without a stop, they were going. The jeep passes, but I jumped in the jeep and I kissed his boots. I was so happy to see them, because my mother and father are coming back right away, no? I was a young kid, but I was a very good runner. And the soldiers really had nothing to eat. I didn't know what a chocolate bar was. So they would throw out cans of sardine, cans of tuna fish, soap, anything you could think of. And I was running and picking all that up, and people would be after me and says, "You're gonna get killed, what are you doing?" And I didn't hear nothing. And I would pick up and I would have my arm full with tuna fish and sardines and mention anything.
After Geislingen, when the when they were starting to lose the war, the Germans and the American army came closer, they took us to another camp. And the piles of dead bodies as high as the ceiling. The American army came closer, and then again we were taken to a train and shipped. While we were in the train stopped, and we saw the American army coming closer to us. And they started to shout, "We are the Americans, we came to liberate you." I didn't believe that this is happening. It was something of a miracle. And I settled down and I realized that we are finally free.
We really did not know. We really did not know about the camps. My whole family were taken, okay? I had no family left. But one uncle and aunt did survive. We waited every day, and then we started to hear my mother and father were not coming back yet. But this family, there was love. Like we felt it. You know, we belonged with them. And their son was like, you know, brothers to us. So we felt we were very happy. So one day, a surviving uncle arrives. So he came into town, and he comes into the house, and he says, "Oh, Monsieur, Madame Riboulot, thank you very much. We're taking the kids." "Oh, really? You're taking the kids?" I remembered them, but I didn't want to go to them. We were very happy. So they went to trial. They won the trial. We didn't want to go. So we went to hiding. It happened to be a summer house that belonged to the mayor. The mayor we had in that town was a Jewish mayor before the war. We would hide there for 1 month. Then my uncle came back to the judge and he says, "So where's the kids?" They really did not want us to stay. So we had to go. But then my brother refused to talk to them, refused to listen to them. So I became a mother. I became a mother for 2 years.
All my cousins, my family didn't survive. My mother, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, they were all killed. After liberation, the American army had some barracks prepared where the Germans used to stay, the German army. And they took us there to those barracks. We had a choice. We could go to a DP camp, we could go to Palestine, and we could go to home, wherever we wanted to go. So we decided to go to our hometown. My father survived the war hiding down the toilet, yes. He worked in coal mines, and he weighed like 85, 90 pounds. His teeth were knocked out. He wound up somehow in Prague in a hospital. And sure enough, we found him. And like I said, he was beyond recognition. He was skin and bone. I was so happy to see him. He looked terrible, but he was alive. And we knew that we will take care of him and he will survive.
After the war, for 2 years I lived with them. But he found out he had a sister that lives in America. He wanted to send my brother and I to America. She said she would take the girl. I'm going to America by myself, and I'm going to leave my brother? No way. They had to push me on the boat. So I came here with the Queen Mary. I was 17 years old. I went up on the board, and I was going to throw myself in the water. So I'm leaning over the banister of the boat, and I was wearing a little bracelet with a little Jewish star dangling, and I'm crying, and I'm throwing myself in the water. And all of a sudden, I hear behind me, a Yiddische Mädel. It means a Jewish girl. They saw me dangling, they saw the Jewish star dangling. It was a group of boys and girls in their 20s that were leaving Romania, and they were making Aliyah to America. The trip was 5 days, and we had 3 more days to be on the boat.
Can you describe what you felt and what you saw when you first arrived to the U.S.?
Well, first I was able to speak their language, even though I had a different accent. I was registered in the school system, and it was another event for me. Once that we became a family of 4, that really stabilized the situation. And those characteristics that I had developed, like biting my nails and sucking my thumb, and et cetera, 3 or 4 weeks after my father arrived in the United States, they were gone. So my need was for security and a unity of family and so on and so forth. And once that occurred, my many weaknesses went goodbye. When my father left us in 1939, I was 7.5 years old. When my father arrived in 1946, I was now 13 years old. My mother, after the war, went to see the family, the 2 ladies who took care of us, to thank them for taking care of us. Now, she had another reason to go to England because her brother lived there, but that was great. Had I not gone through what I went through, I would not be the same person.
After visiting our home, we knew this is not a place for us because there were no Jews.
Oh, did you ever see the teacher who took your jewelry?
Never. I saw his wife. And the wife saw me, and she kept on walking like I was some kind of a ghost. The house, I never got back anything that they took away from me. The house was totally empty. What happened after we came to Czechoslovakia, my father was eventually released from the hospital. All of us got jobs. My sisters were dress designers, and we came to the United States the end of 1949. I was 18. When we came to the US, we didn't know a word of English. Nothing. We never asked for any money from the government. We supported ourselves. After I met Sydney, we dated for 2 years, and I got married in 1952. Yes, he was a Holocaust survivor. Today, I have a beautiful family. Children, 3 children, 7 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren. And we spend a lot of time together. Holidays are beautiful together, and life is good.
My aunt and uncle in their house, yeah. She has 3 children. Okay, one child was married. I lived in their house. She was extremely very nice to me. The minute I arrived here, all I thought it was my brother. Yeah, you have to show papers. You have to show that you're able to take care of the person that you bring in. I insisted that I should get a job. I wanted to go to work and to save money to bring my brother over. I was very, very unhappy, and he felt sorry for me. So besides, he was friends with my cousin, and he kept coming up, and he was extremely, very, very nice to me. He wanted to make me feel good, and he started to teach me English. I fell in love with him, and thank God, yeah. So within the year we were married, and we were married 13 years till we were able to make out the papers to bring my brother here. It took 13 years, yeah. I'm married 73 years, okay, 73 years. I have 2 daughters, so I was a very young mother, and I have 4 grandchildren, 3 boys and 1 girl, and 1 great-grandchild, a little boy. When I lived with this family, with a Christian family, I didn't want to be a Jew. She said to me, she says, your parents left us 2 Jewish children, and when they come back, that's what they're going to get. When the war finished, everything they could give to thanks to the righteous people, we've done. We're family. We remain family. Yeah.
If you could speak to your parents today, what would you say to them?
I would tell them, Mom, Dad, I'm continuing to speak in your name because you can't speak what happened. But I will tell the story in your name, in my little brother's name, what they did to you and how they killed you. You should never forget.
So what's an important message that you want to give to the next generation?
They should never forget. They should always remember what happened. History, hopefully, will never repeat itself. And just be upstanders and not. If anybody says anything, they should stand up and talk about it, talk about the history.
Message to the generation is to keep on telling everyone's stories because all the stories stay alive and inspire others.
It's really amazing and important for generations to follow to pass on this story.
It was like life-changing. It was so cool to like hear the survivor's story and like, because I thought I was like, I've read stuff about this all the time, but then I actually got to hear like Rosalie say it from like coming from her mouth. There was a lot of emotions.
Holocaust survivors' stories aren't going to be around, so if you don't believe it, that's not, there's people, there's evidence. Like, we have to pass down these stories and keep their message going.
It's like so brave of them that after all of that, they can come here and share their story.
Thank you for continuing sharing your story because it like can change people's lives. She's awesome.
Had I not gone through what I went through, I would not be the same person. What people consider important, I very often consider, what are you making such a big deal out of that? I don't let things aggravate me as much as perhaps Joe Average has. As intelligent human beings, we need to make sure that there's justice in this world and that we recognize that every human being needs the right to live a normal, successful life, if that's possible. I think my parents will be very pleased with what both their children have accomplished and what their grandchildren and great-grandchildren have accomplished.
We need to like learn history and we keep teaching history so it doesn't happen again.
Well, that like we're one of the last to know, so like if we don't share it, people won't understand. One day, like if I had kids, I could show them and like I could show future generations.
Names on Numbers was very fun and it was a great experience. We have a huge responsibility telling the future generations and pass down the survivors' stories.
They hold a very strong legacy to all of us, and they have amazing stories that are very great to share.
Everyone's different. Don't hate on someone just because they're not exactly like you, because there's no one that's exactly like you. And if you hate on someone just because they're different, then you're gonna have a very sad and lonely life.
I really felt that their courage was inspiring. For them to share such a difficult part of their lives was really nice to hear. And I wanted to maybe tell them that it's really important that we got to learn. I would thank them for that.
I think my message is just to like really understand what other people are going through. You can't judge what people do because you don't know like everything going on in their life.
If you're interested in learning about the tragedies that went on during the Holocaust and more about the Holocaust itself, that would be a really good program to sign up for.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It means the world that you're able to do this for kids like us. Should never have happened, and it can't happen again. We can't let it happen again. It just made me really understand it a lot better.
I think in a world so full of hatred, it's important to have empathy towards others, listen to them the same way they'd listen to you, and definitely be the bigger person in all those situations that nobody else is taking the courage to be.
Because I feel that if I have an opportunity to hear their stories and tell other people about it, that I should.
And I think it's amazing that they take this time out of their day or out of any day to come share their story with people that they don't know. I really thank them for that.
If you could speak to your parents today, what would you say to them?
After you didn't see your parents for 80 years, what would you say? It's hard to say. It's you know, something is hard for me to say. I would just say, I love you. Thank God you're here. And I appreciate life. I'm thankful. I don't take nothing for granted. For everything I had, I'm thankful.